Well, another story brewing on the diplomatic front. China has lodged a protest with India today, accusing Indian troops of crossing the boundary near Sikkim. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the protest has been made in Beijing and Delhi, with China urging India to immediately withdraw its border guards that have crossed the boundary, as they said, and have a thorough investigation in the matter. There's been a dispute over the construction of a road in the area, which is apparently the reason why Beijing has also stopped a batch of Indian pilgrims for the Kailash Mansorovar Yatra. Vishnu Shom now joining us for more on that big story. Vishnu, there seems to have actually been a standoff developing in this area for several days now. What more are you hearing?
It's a mystery standoff, and Nidhi, I think that's pretty much all I can tell you about it, because nobody in the army or the defense ministry wants to talk about it at all. Now, usually when these standoffs happen, there is a sense from the army that yes, look, a particular incident has taken place, because it's not uncommon for these incidents to take place given how long the boundary is between India and China along the line of actual control, or the LAC. But in this particular incident, nobody wants to say anything. But I want to make it clear, and this is an important addition to this developing story, the video which was showcased on social media, which apparently showed Indian and Chinese soldiers jostling in this area in Sikkim, is not accurate in the sense that this did not take place a few days back at this particular location in Sikkim. It did indeed happen. It does show the tensions which exist sometimes between soldiers of both sides, but it's an old video and the incident took place somewhere else.
All right, Vishnu, thanks a lot for that update. We have Ambassador Vivek Karju joining us, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, Jayadev Ranade, President at the Center for China Analysis and Strategy. He served in China as well. Ambassador Karju, let me ask you first. It's interesting that this flare-up with China again is coming at a time when the Prime Minister was in Washington, and the Chinese media has gone to town today, about the India-US meeting, saying that it would not be in India's interests and could even lead to quote-unquote catastrophic results. I mean, this is according to the Chinese state-run media. Do you think the timing is important here, or this is just another India-China skirmish which keeps happening at regular intervals?
I would tend to think that it is a India-China skirmish, but certainly the Chinese would not be happy with the joint statement, Indo-US joint statement, because the subtext which runs through the joint statement is can be interpreted as something which targets China, not directly. China is not named, but if you see, there is reference to navigation, there is reference to connectivity, there is reference to the upholding of international law. All this concerns China, even more as the Chinese have started taking more interest in Afghanistan, and in that they are supporting the Pakistanis quite clearly. The joint statement speaks very eloquently about India's role in Afghanistan, including in the security sector. And finally, it profiles very starkly that whereas the Chinese are preventing the designation of Masood Azhar in the UN context, the Americans have gone ahead and designated Sayyid Salahuddin. So
yeah.
Finally, it also demands of Pakistan that it should not undertake terrorism. And in fact, I have never seen such strong language, because it demands naming Pakistan that it must ensure. Now, the word ensure is a very strong word, that its territory
exactly
must not be used for these purposes.
Yeah,
so if you take it in the full context,
absolutely.
full context,
then
the Chinese would obviously be very unhappy with this.
Mr. Ranade, I mean, this, at least on the border, things keep happening from time to time because there's no sort of clear border as such. So you have troops on both sides that often transgress. But it's been a while since we've seen something like this happen.
Exactly. And in the context of Sikkim particularly, they have recognized Sikkim as a part of India.
Yeah.
Now, moment you recognize Sikkim as a part of India, there are certain boundaries that define a state, and de facto they would have accepted those boundaries. That is the first point. The second, if I can just indulge a bit and go back, it was the time of Prime Minister Vajpayee's visit that this deal was reached between China and India in 2003, where the Chinese agreed to accept Sikkim as part of India. 2006, their maps began depicting Sikkim as a part of India. Of course, they haven't issued an official statement till today acknowledging Sikkim as a part of India. But within, I would say, months of having accepted Sikkim as a part of India, the moment their maps began depicting it as such, the number of intrusions in northern Sikkim went up, and there were, I think, almost 75 intrusions in 2007. 2008, their vice foreign minister again reopened the issue when our foreign minister went there and said it's not a settled matter. So, one point that does come through is that even when you have an agreement reached with China, it's not necessary that they're going to follow it.
Follow through. Do you think that's what's happening here?
Certainly, I think that's what's happening here. There is a new found kind of, shall I say, assertiveness on the part of China, which we have been seeing. It's increased since April 2015. And what we are seeing on display here today are, I would say, three things happening at the same time. One, as you said, the coincidence of our Prime Minister's visit to the United States, and the Chinese, as you know, are paranoid about what the US is going to do to them, or they think is doing to them. The second is their attempt to keep us under pressure and change, or if I may say, extend their perception of the boundary. As you know, the area where this is taking place is in a very critical part of the boundary, and they are trying to push it down to a place called Gemachun. Now, if they do that, that means they are pushing the their claim on Arunachal Pradesh. They are trying to strengthen it, because our claim, our contention that the tri-junction between Bhutan, Tibet and India is at Batangla. That's 12 miles north of where this incident
So
happened.
The moment they shift that,
they are shifting it 18 miles south.
That's very important. So, that actually shows, Jyoti, what Jaidev Ranade is saying is a far more aggressive Chinese position then on the boundary issue itself and reopening the whole Sikkim question. How have things gone so south with Beijing so quickly in the span of this last year?
Well, it is interesting that that the Chinese have picked Sikkim. I'm not sure that they're trying to reopen the Sikkim question, but they're definitely, I mean, Xi Jinping is definitely putting pressure on the Indian government. I think some of it has to do with the fact that in these last couple of years, since actually Xi Jinping came to India in August of 2014, you remember that's, in fact, when he was in India, there was a so-called intrusion in Tumar, which is the Aksai Chin, the border in Aksai Chin. And 1 year before, but that was when the Manmohan Singh government was in power, again it was in Dipsang, in the same region. But I think what's happening under Xi Jinping is that he's asserting himself much more. You've seen the One Belt, One Road summit that happened last month. He believes that China is a world power, it is here to stay, and that the rest of the world, especially India, because it's the other big power in Asia, must kowtow to the Middle Kingdom. Now, the Indians are obviously not about to do that, and in these last couple of years, we've seen how Prime Minister Modi has also come up against the Chinese, most famously at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting last year in Tashkent,
on the
when
NSG issue.
Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping basically had a bit of a diplomatic spat over India's NSG membership. But having said that, I think now the Indian government has decided to take a step back. You did not see this argument develop when Modi met Xi Jinping in Astana last month. Whether this has something to do, whether this particular Sikkim incident has something to do with PM's visit to America, I'm not sure. But the fact remains that Xi Jinping is a much more assertive leader. And I think the fact is, the fact remains, Nidhi, that both India and China have to talk very seriously, not only about the line of actual control, which the special representatives of both sides have been mandated to do since 2003, but they have to discuss the border and sort it out between themselves.
I think what you're saying about caution also, Bharat, is it's interesting because those of us who cover the Ministry of External Affairs have been asking them all day for a response on the Chinese Foreign Ministry's protest, and at the moment there's total silence on that. So maybe they're evolving a cautious response to it. But do you think there's a link to the US visit in the way also that the Chinese media has reacted to the Prime Minister in Washington?
Look, I think coincidentally, I would agree that there is a link. We have no firm evidence about whether there is a link or not, but the timing is far more coincidental than it could be. You know, today what's happening, if you look at it across Asia Pacific or Indo-Pacific, however you want to frame it, for most of us, China is the largest trading partner, including India. And in security terms, we align with the United States. And today you have a very weakened political setup in the United States. The president, they sense the political confusion in the United States. You see President Trump flip-flopping on his positions on China. You have an Indian Prime Minister who goes, visits, and almost in his in the panel that we discussed, he almost achieves everything that we want. The strong language on China. You're slowly defining your relationship in a much more assertive manner. The US and India are asserting themselves vis-a-vis China. You have a position that's taken against Pakistan, who is one of China's principal ally. If I were Chinese, if I don't make these statements or these kinds of noises, nobody would take me seriously.
So you're not surprised?
So I'm not surprised, you know, and I am forced to take a position, and I do want to take this seriously.
And so, Ambassador Karju, what does India do? I mean, we seem to not be very consistent on how we want to deal with China, and obviously policy has to evolve depending on how things are. But what do you think India's strategy needs to be? Because we seem to have hit a complete dead end on Masood Azhar, a complete dead end on the NSG membership, and now you have these the border lighting up again.
Look, I am in entire agreement with the rest of the panel that the Chinese have become very, very aggressive. The only point on which I am still not clear, in fact, I am a little skeptical, if they had deliberately planned all this to coincide it with the Prime Minister's visit to Washington. However, the question on what we should do, I think we first of all need to have no illusions about the entity that we are dealing with. We should have no confusion on this talk, no talk of trying to establish and sway Chinese leadership on the basis of personal chemistry, etc. We've got to then have a consistent policy, not defensive, at the same time not adventurous, and building our relationships with the rest of Asia, and this is going to be a long-term haul, and finally being absolutely and clinically
clear, proceeding
with the challenge that Pakistan poses, because it's a China-Pakistan nexus. And the weaker link there is Pakistan. And that is what we've been wavering all through the last 70 years. And now the time has come to put the Chinese on notice that despite the new positive relationship which is developing between China and Pakistan, this pillar of the CPEC, we will protect our interests in Pakistan and in the region, despite whatever the Chinese may want us to do.
So I'll give Mr. Ranade the last word on that issue then of actually what Ambassador Karju said, I think was a reference to the Prime Minister reaching out to Xi Jinping at that time in the swing together. Didn't quite, you know, work out swingingly well, did it?
It wasn't supposed to work out, I would say, because the incursion at Chumar was certainly planned. And it was deliberate.
Yeah.
Ever since Xi Jinping has come to power, in fact, we have been seeing a growing assertiveness by China. But I just wanted to make a comment about what Jyoti said when she said that the government of India seems to have taken a step back. To an extent, she's right. Modi did make that remark about not a shot being fired in 40 years. And I think that was done to try and ease the tensions that had developed in India-China relations. But, you know, it takes two to tango. So where he has signaled a desire to really improve relations, there has to be a similar response from the Chinese. I don't see that coming. And in fact, what we are seeing right now happening at Sikkim, as I said, is a serious development. And the kind of rhetoric that has accompanied it is certainly not very comfortable.
So not just a regular border skirmish, that's what you're warning, especially because it's Sikkim. Thanks very much to all of you for joining us tonight. These are stories we continue to track closely. We'll be back tomorrow night as well. Do join us then at 8 o'clock. Good night.